Hello all and welcome to another Wing review. Now, a little while ago I got the box set for the Studio Ghibli films. Don't bother commenting about how I pronounce it wrong, it's Ghibli. And I watched the film. I'd seen a few, but not all of them, so I got the box set so I could fill in the gaps. And I did a video a little while ago on my top 5 loved and hated Studio Ghibli films. And one of the films that I quite liked and I gave an honourable mention to was Tales from Earthsea. I really enjoyed the film, it was good, but it turned out that the films was actually based on a series of books. When I was looking into it, it turned out that Ursula Le Guin, I think that's how you pronounce her name, Guin, she originally was said it was good, but then later on said that she was quite disappointed with how the film turned out. So I thought, okay, fair enough. Let's see how the books go. So I got the collection. There's 6 books in total. This is the first 4 books: The Wizard of Earthsea, The Tombs of Atuan, The Farthest Shore, and Tehanu. Then you have The Other Wind, and then you have Tales from Earthsea, which is just a collection of 5 short stories, and this is what the film's named after. This is mainly going to be about the books rather than the film. I will do a small sort of thing about the film later on, but I'm not going to sort of like actually go through all the differences between the books and the film. I'll do a few, but not. This isn't just going to be like an exhaustive list. If you want something like that, then sure, I can have a go at doing a sort of like a what's the difference type thing. But just for this is mainly going to be looking at the books. So I started off. I just got this one at the start, I think, or did I get the whole lot and then start? I don't know, I can't remember. But I started reading this, and in general, I really liked the first 3 books. Wasn't that fussed about the 4th, wasn't that fussed about the 5th, and then wasn't that fussed about the Tales from Earthsea either. So if I was to read the books again, I would probably just read the first 3 and then stop. The first book, just a very brief outline of what they're all about. They take place in the world of Earthsea, and in there, magic is prevalent. You have wizards, witches, dragons, and all that good stuff. And there's a guy, Ged, well, Sparrowhawk, he's more commonly known as. He goes to Roke, which is where the main training for a wizard is, and it turns out he is quite a promising upcoming. I got a message. A promising upcoming wizard, but he gets a little bit too big for his boots, gets a bit cocky, causes a big problem, and then he has to try and sort out the massive problem he caused. So, not a bad book. It then goes on to the Tombs of Atuan, which is where it introduces Tenna. She's sort of like a princess reborn, and she's sort of like like the queen type thing of the tombs. And other characters from the previous book do come into it eventually. And I really enjoyed that one. It was good. It then goes on back to Ged, and someone comes up to him and says, "There's massive problems. Magic is disappearing. We need to find out what's going on. Let's go and search for the cause." So they go off and on this adventure to try and find out why magic is becoming weaker. Good book. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Then went on to Tehanu. Oh dear. It was okay. Nothing really happened. It just seemed to be more like a day in the life of characters, really. Again, characters from the previous book come back. I don't want to say too much because if I say which characters come back, then if anything happens in the previous book where they might die, then it goes of they're not going to die, they're in the next one. So I'll just so it's just like someone does die near the beginning of the 4th book, and so people go to his house to sort things out for him and all that. I think they're there for his death and everything. They hang around. They go back to where they came from, decide they preferred the life where they were, so go back to the house, stay there, and just continue their life there. That was it. It pretty much it. End of book. There's a little bit more to it than that, but certainly not enough to kind of make the 4th book a gripping novel. I was entertained enough to want to sort of carry on, but because I normally read when I'm at lunch at work, if I've got my book a few times, and on that case, it wasn't a sort of, oh no, I can't find out what happened next. It was just a case of, oh. So a little bit disappointed with that one. I know each book does have certain themes that it goes on and all that sort of thing, and yes, the 4th book does have themes that are very well represented in the book. I just didn't find it a particularly interesting read. Then I went on to, not that one, the other one, The Other Wind. And it's the same sort of thing again, really. Not a lot. Well, it ended very well, but the main problem I had with this one was that it hinted at a much larger, grander world, really, because it's got the dragons and the magic and all that sort of thing. Um, it almost like there's going to be a war between dragons and mankind, but that never really happens. They kind of just sort things out. Um, and even with the whole political side, now you have the parties getting together, discussing what they're going to do. That just kind of gets briefly mentioned, and then it just moves on. So it's got like hints of what could, it's almost like Game of Thrones mixed. If magic was a lot more prevalent, it could have been that. Um, but it just kind of skims over things a bit too quickly and kind of um, wraps things up. You know, when near the end of Game of Thrones, when you have Daenerys and you have Cersei, and they're doing the whole "you bow down to me, no, you bow down to me, no." It's almost as if they sort of went up to each other and went, "Friends, yeah, go on then," and that was the end of it. It's like, oh, okay. So that's pretty much what that was. So it's a shame. But again, entertaining enough to see it through. Ended well. Just again, not a particularly gripping story, really. And then I went on to do the Tales from Earthsea short stories. Again, all right. Some of the bits were quite good, but it was odd, really good bits here and there. You sort of think, oh, this is really getting good now, but it was like it would peak and then it would slump again, and then the book would end. Well, the story would end. There's 5 stories in here. They sort of take place during the time of the other books as well, maybe slightly after. But again, enjoyed it enough to read through it and finish it. There is a bit at the end where it's got all of the description of Earthsea, where it sort of goes into stories that are mentioned, creation myths, the people, where things come from, and all that. Like a history of Earthsea type thing. I didn't read that bit. I just didn't really see the point. But it probably would be quite interesting. But I'd kind of had enough, so I moved on to a different book. So again, it was a bit disappointing. So if I was to read the books again, I would probably just read the first 3 and then stop there, really. So if you watch the film, these books give. So I can understand why Ursula was a little bit disappointed with the film, because I watched the film again yesterday, and it hints at some things from the book, but just doesn't explain. I mean, even there's a bit with Tenna, where she mentions about how being somewhere reminds her of when she was saved from the tombs of Aswan. Never mentioned again, no flashback, no nothing. And even things about the dragons, because humans and dragons used to be one. It's all detailed in the book, and there was a choice. You could either go, if you wanted freedom or if you wanted power. Mankind chose, well, a group of dragons chose power, became humans, and became affiliated with water and earth, whereas dragons chose freedom and had air and fire. So that is mentioned in the film right at the beginning, within the first sort of 10 minutes, and then never really mentioned again. But with the books, it expands on it a lot more, particularly in the later books. And so things that happen in the film, with certain things that happen, it almost seems like it's happening for plot convenience. In the books, it's actually properly explained and it actually makes sense. So I can see why she was a little bit disappointed, because it does hint at the much grander world, rather than just being a bog standard good guy versus bad guy type film with Cobb. Willem Dafoe was brilliant. The original one, I don't know if I mentioned this, when I first watched it, I watched it subtitled, but there's a song that Tahanu sings, which for some reason in the subtitled version wasn't subtitled. So I watched it dubbed this time, and Willem Dafoe was brilliant as Cobb. At first I sort of thought that the voice didn't really fit the look of the character, but then as the film went on, that just made him even more creepy. I always imagined that Willem was just there, sort of right in front of the microphone, just whispering almost into it. It really worked well. But in the books, the character, what he's doing, he does different things in the books, but his reasons for doing it and how they resolve it and all that sort of thing is completely different. So, like with the books, it hints at a much larger, grander world that it just completely bypasses. So if they could do proper films based on the books, just one film per book or something like that, it would probably be really, really good, and I would thoroughly enjoy watching it. But I still really enjoyed the Studio Ghibli film. It was really entertaining. Yes, there were a few changes and all that sort of thing, but hey, it's an adaptation. They're going to change a few things. It's just that certain liberties were taken where you sort of think if only they would have. But then again, I suppose that's the same sort of thing with any adaptation, really. So that's it, really. As I said, if you're going to give these books a read because you like the film or if you just like books in general, definitely give the first 3 books a read. By all means, try the later ones, particularly for the explanation of things that happen. But really, other than that, just go with the first 3. They're the best ones. See you next time.